Florida at school, and my friend who is saying, what if God wasn't all those things? What if God was someone who was all loving, and when you had done something wrong, realized that it was from a point of pain, not from a point of evil, and would take you and comfort you and say, it's okay, let me heal you. And as she was saying that, we were sitting on the grass during our lunch break one day, and looking at her, and something was happening in my mind. And I was realizing that perhaps she was right, perhaps I didn't know everything about it, and my mind was opening to whatever she was going to tell me next. And what she told me next was to go check out this bookstore. I lived in Orlando, it was called the Spiral Circle. And she said, go to the bookstore, look around, see what you find. I asked for more details, but she wouldn't give any to me. She said, you have to find out when you go. So I went, and I got lost. It took me about a week and a half to work up the courage to go. And because I still thought I was kind of crazy, you know, I didn't know. Still hadn't told any of my friends about any of this. And I knew no one else who was like me except for this woman who was just an acquaintance. So I went to the store and I parked, and I walked in, and bells tinkled on the door, and there was the smell of incense, and I'd never smelled incense before. And there were all these colors and all these books about the crazy stuff I was reading, and it wasn't just a shelf, like maybe two shelves high and about yay wide. It was a whole bookstore full of this stuff, and I felt like I was in heaven. I didn't know what was happening, and I saw the people behind the counter, and they didn't look crazy, and they didn't look like they were going to eat me or anything, so I wasn't really worried about demons, which I didn't know how to not do. And so I'm looking around in the bookstore, I'm looking at the books, I'm picking up singing bowls and trying them, and looking at crystals even though I didn't really know what they were, and I see on the schedule that today there's going to be a Reiki presentation. And I asked the people behind the counter, what's Reiki? And they kind of tried to explain it to me, but I didn't really get it. They were telling me it was something having to do with energy healing, like what's energy, you know. So they said, well, go to the presentation. It's free. It starts in about 15 minutes. Why don't you go and see for yourself? So I did. And there was one other woman there, and then there was the woman giving the presentation. And the other woman there had already taken Reiki level 1. So she was already knowing about all this stuff. And so her and the lady giving the presentation, whose name was Susanna, were going back and forth and talking about stuff, and talking about how great Reiki is. And I'm thinking to myself, what are you talking about? I feel like I don't know anything, but I don't know if I believe them, because this stuff sounds out of the realm of possibility. You can just touch someone and they're healed. I don't understand that. And then they said, well, you've never experienced it. Why don't you let us give you Reiki so you can see? Just sit there. You don't have to do anything. And so they're peer pressuring me, so I say, okay. And they did. And as I'm sitting there, one sat here, the other student sat there and started giving Reiki to my arm. And Susanna sat behind me and gave Reiki to my shoulders. And I will say that I ended up taking Reiki from Susanna, and I've never been able to find her since I finished taking Reiki from her. I've looked for her. I've sent emails to her old email address. I've called the bookstore where she went all the time. They have no memory of her ever giving presentations there. They have no memory of anyone who fits her description. Maybe one day she'll come out of the woodwork and say I was here the whole time, but I haven't ever been able to find her, which is really interesting. We hung out like over the course of the whole year. It's not like I just met her once. So I'm sitting there getting this Reiki treatment for the first time, and I'm getting these funny chills go through my body, and I'm feeling like I just want to laugh. This is weird. I don't know what's happening. And then Susanna starts telling me about my father, who had just had his ACL torn in an accident at his martial arts school. And she starts telling me all about my father's teacher and how he accidentally tore the ACL, and how his career is now getting bad because of ego stuff and this other thing. And she's right. There's no possible way she could know these things because it just happened the week before. She wasn't asking me questions and me feeding her the answers, you know, well, I feel like there's a block in your life, or I feel like something's wrong with one of your parents, you know, like none of that stuff that fake psychics do, you know. And I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to think, but I knew that I wanted more, and I knew that this was something that I had to go after. I felt that heart resonance that I just knew I had to follow. So I asked her about taking Reiki. She said I definitely should. She brought me into the store and showed me this crystal, and she said that I had to buy it, said that I had worked with it before, told me how to use it a little bit, and what are you going to say to that? I mean, it just looked like a kind of smoky crystal with a bunch of lines running through it. I didn't know what to say about that, but I bought it because I wasn't about to say no, not when she had just told me all that stuff about my dad. And then I went home. I ended up taking Reiki from her. I ended up learning about reincarnation, which I didn't believe at first, in which she met all of my arguments with, and then some. And then she did a past life reading on me, and as she's talking to me, I'm remembering things happen. And she tells me about this terrible storm that I died in. And then a couple months later, there's this horrible hurricane that comes through Orlando, and I can hear the wind trying to get in the door. Have you ever been in a hurricane? It sounds like there are voices trying to pound their way into your house. It's terrifying. And I'm listening, and it sounds familiar to me. And then the next morning, when everyone wakes up and surveys the damage and goes through and sees where the trees are down and where the roofs are stripped, I didn't remember that. And I remembered that it was because I wasn't there the next morning when I'd seen this before. I could remember great big oak trees just splintering like toothpicks, and I could remember people screaming, and I could remember my emotions as it was all going on. And it blew my mind. What are you going to do after you start having that stuff come? So from there, I progressed. I took Reiki level 1. I took Reiki level 2. I ended up learning a lot about Wicca was my first class, and earth spiritualities and the way to manifest and create things and do spells, which are really just setting intentions in a ritualistic way. And so all that was great, and I thought, this is it, I got it. I know what everything is now, and I kind of came out a little bit to some of my friends, but I still have friends who are very much not into this stuff, and it's just kind of my weird stuff, you know. They just kind of, even after writing the whole book, I still have friends who are like, yeah, let's change the subject and talk about something else. And that's fine, you know, everyone's path isn't like this. So it was great for about a year. And then I started graduate school, and I was in school for health. And I was also very much learning about herbalism, mind-body medicine, and how affirmations can do as much as prescription medicine, and how herbs can do a lot more. And all of these new realms of knowledge, and meanwhile, I'm in school with people who believe in the normal pedagogy for teaching how to deal with the body, and who only believe in prescription medicine, who only believe in the things that don't work as well as the stuff that I'm doing, right there next to them, and they still didn't believe it. And I knew, I can't do this for another 4 years. I was then planning to get my PhD in physical therapy, but I couldn't, because I couldn't stand it anymore. So after I graduated with my master's in health science education, I was like, I'm done with you guys, I can't take it, this is killing me. I mean, I loved everyone I was in school with, but the knowledge divide was just so intense that I knew I couldn't do work there. And I had wanted to marry the mind-body-spirit connection, but then I found out through my research that had been done like 100 years ago, so I wasn't going to contribute anything to the field. I didn't know what to do. I knew that I wasn't ready to go out into the real world yet, because I had no idea what I was supposed to be doing with my life. So I went back to school again and started pursuing a PhD in transpersonal psychology, which was essentially holistic psychology, talking about spirituality. Our assignments were things like, go take a mindful walk in nature and tell us about the visions you get. You know, this fantastic school. And so I went there and got my master's, and then I was a year away from getting my PhD. I was starting to write my dissertation. And every time I sat down to write my dissertation, I would have an emotional reaction. I'd be really irritated, and nothing would be right, and I couldn't think, and I couldn't type. And then I would get away from the computer and go and sit down for a while, and then I would come back and set all my little area up, get my cup of tea, and my water, and my notebook, and my computer, and sit down, and the same thing would happen again. And it got worse and worse until I couldn't even go over there to sit down at my computer. How was I ever going to write a dissertation? So I said, let me sit down and make a list of what I want out of life on one side of the paper, and why I'm getting a PhD on the other side. I thought it would rejuvenate my efforts. It did the opposite, because I realized that everything I wanted in life didn't anymore match getting the PhD. All the things that I wanted to do and be in life, I could do right now. I didn't need the PhD. And all of the reasons that I had the PhD were either ego-based, me feeling like I wasn't good enough without letters behind my name, or they were based on me wanting other people to be proud of me and then feel like I was worth something. Well, my sister has her PhD, so I need to get mine in order for my parents to love me. Well, that's ridiculous when you think about it. And all the list did was convince me not to go to school. So I called up my school and I said, I don't know what's happening. I'm so sorry. And they, being transpersonal psychologists, said, you gotta do what you gotta do. If it's on your path, go ahead. We'll leave a happy note in your file if you ever want to come back and get your PhD. That's fine. So I said, sayonara. And and that was about when I started to have my contactee experiences. I knew about guides, I knew about guardians, I knew about angels, I knew about my own. In grad school, I had lived in an apartment that was right next to a vortex. And the only reason I knew that was because of the physical characteristics. It was a spot right in the middle of Gainesville, Florida. It was the University of Florida that I was going to. And it was a plot of land in the center of the city that had never been developed. trees. It was a forest on one lot. And I only paid attention after all these things started coming into my house all the time. I'd be going to sleep at night, and I saw in my mind's eye, I'm drifting off to sleep, and then I'm across the room, and I'm seeing myself sleep. And I'm seeing these two really tall beings standing over me and looking down at me. And then one of them, they didn't look human at all. They looked almost like the Loch Ness Monster, actually. You know how like the body at the bottom is long neck and then a head up at the top? That's kind of what they reminded me of. And they're looking down at me. I'm sleeping on a blow-up mattress because I've just moved in. I didn't have any furniture yet. And then one of them's head, I'm about here. He's about here. His head goes whoosh, like that down toward my face. And I go, and I jump out of bed. I didn't like the way that felt at all. And so I get out my sage, and I'm smudging the heck out of my apartment, and I'm saying, go away, don't come in here. And I ended up smudging every single day because stuff was always there. And later when I went back to look at it, I realized that they didn't feel malicious. Those ones, there were others that did. Those didn't feel malicious. They felt like they were almost researching me. Or they felt that, like they were like interested in me for some reason, just curious. And after, of course, it's bright sun outside, and I'm talking to my father on the phone about it because he was the one that taught me to meditate so well. He only firmly believed that I was imagining everything as far as different parts of my own emotional personality coming up and rearing their head and talking to me like they were someone else. He did think that I was having real experiences. But what ended up happening was he came to visit me, so I asked for a guardian. And he ended up being not human. I didn't know anything about griffins at the time, but that's essentially what it was. And he was very intense, very strong, golden, and serious. So every now and then, I was really lonely when I was in grad school because there was a lot happening, and I didn't have very many friends. When you're like this, you know, it's hard to really get close to people because after a certain level, they'll go. Or I had even a friend who used to have an eating disorder when we were in college, and at some point she just had, you know how sometimes people flip on you because you bring up their insecurities, and she said to me, I just gained 5 pounds, did you put a spell on me so I'd gain weight? And I said, honey, do you realize that the way that this works, in order for you to gain 5 pounds, I would have to gain like 100 because I have to pull it into me and then push it out to you. And number two, I never do that. What are you talking about? So it was problematic, and I had some really rough times there. I was very lonely. So every now and then, this guy would walk around my house, and there was a spot that he sat kind of on the side of the house. And as I was falling asleep, I would kind of get up in my spirit body, and I would go outside and like sit against him and, you know, kind of snuggle against him. And it was really funny because he wasn't used to that type of interaction. So you kind of stand there like this, but it was fine. I knew that he probably liked it, but he, you know, didn't really say much. And my father came to visit me, and I told him about this guardian. He thinks this is all in my head. And he comes, and we park, and I say, Dad, I'm going to call in my guardian and see if you can see him. I didn't really tell him what he looked like very much. And so he said, okay. And so I went into a little meditation. I asked him to do the same. And I called him in, asked him to come and show himself to my dad. And I opened up my eyes and said, okay, look. And I looked over, and he opened his eyes, and he was looking out of the windshield of my truck. And then his face gets very intense, shocked like this. And he just sits there. Oh, sweet, I'm good. He just sits there for a second, and then he says, Charis, something happened. I said, okay, well, what happened? And it turns out that up to the hood of my truck, he sees this great big tall griffin walk up to the hood of the truck, look at him through the windshield, brush up against the hood of the truck, kind of like a cat does. He was probably about yay tall, about right with the hood, and then dissolve into a golden mist and go around the truck. And my father didn't believe in that stuff. So I was like, fantastic! How do you believe me? And since my father did have a difficult childhood, he's had problems with nightmares. So later that visit, I don't know if it was that night, it might have been a couple nights later, because he stayed with me for about a week, he was having a nightmare. And he has nightmares of being yelled at and abused. And in the middle of one of these nightmares, he wakes up, and apparently they happen to him every time his life is happy. You know, like every time he's in a good strain, this stuff comes. So he wakes up, he's on a futon in my living room. He looks to the side, and there are these two great golden eyes right there staring at him. And this is what he told me the following morning. And it was my guide. And the head was probably about yay big, because, you know, they can get bigger and smaller or whatever. And he said that the back was so tall that he could have brushed the ceiling. And he was just staring at him. He was kind of opaque. And then, After my father was awake, he's looking back at the guide. The guide stands up, comes over, and then sits on the bed. So my father was like inside of the opaque figure. And then he went back to sleep, not a nightmare. And that has never happened in his life until that night. All the other times when he had nightmares, he would just keep having them. There was no more sleep that night. So these things are happening. I think I know everything. I think that I'm good with the spiritual world. I can exercise a house, which I did one time. It was intense. I can go up and talk to someone else's guides. I have friends in high places. If I need to clear something out, I can call in my buddies and get them to do it. This is fantastic. Still pretty much in the closet about it, though. Didn't really tell anyone what happened. Very much a double life there. And so then after I graduate from there, I move out to California and do my other work in transpersonal psychology, like I told you. I meet Terry, we get engaged, and then we're driving down to Texas, where we were going to stay for a few months. And I had taken the night shift driving, because I like driving at night. I get sleepier when there's sun in my eyes. I can go for like 12 hours, no problem. Give me a good audio book and coffee, and I like driving. And so I was really tired, because it was the morning. He was taking the morning shift. It's about mid-morning, maybe 10 or 11. He takes over. I lean back in my chair to go to sleep. Have this black t-shirt over my eyes, and I'm finally calming myself. As I become more spiritually aware, it's harder to ignore the speed that my body is moving in a car or in a plane or something, and so it's hard for me to relax enough to go to sleep because I'm keeping aware that I'm going 70 miles an hour over space. It's strange. It never used to bother me. It's kind of annoying, to be honest, but what are you going to do? So I'm going to sleep. All of a sudden, Terry says to me, we're driving through Iowa, Charis, I think you should see this. He says things like that to me, so of course I rip off my little t-shirt that's over my eyes and sit up. And across the horizon in front of us, shaped like the edge of a disc, filling up the entire horizon, like bang, bang, huge. And this is the plains, no trees, no houses, is an anvil cloud. Have y'all ever seen an anvil cloud? It's as solid as anything that's around here. I mean, it's hard. It looks like you could knock on it. It has ripples on the front. It's sitting way down low to the earth. I mean, skyscraper tall, not tall. And you can't see under it. It's black under there. And there's blue sky, anvil cloud. And all I knew was I didn't want to go under there. I'd never seen an anvil cloud before. I'd seen a wall cloud, which isn't the same. Wall cloud just looks like intense clouds coming at you. Anvil cloud has a shape, and it's intense, and it's solid. And so we're driving toward it. I'm having a quiet panic attack because I'm thinking, I don't know why I don't want to go under that, but I don't. Some primordial fear was gripping me. I didn't want to go under. But what are you going to do? It's coming toward us. We're going toward it. There's nowhere we can go. It's just a road on a prairie of Iowa. And so we go under it. The lip curves down. And with an academic curiosity, I kind of wanted to see what was under there, even though I'm freaking out and terrified. So we go underneath. And on the bottom, there was a lip that curled so you couldn't see, but once you get below the lip, there were all these undulations of all these colors that were like grays and browns and whites. And the only thing I can think of to really say what it looked like is a jellyfish. You know how a jellyfish has all those folds underneath it? Kind of looked like that, but they were still very solid. There was no rain yet, nothing, just black and dark. And I'm still extremely scared. I'm flipping out. I'm breathing fast and my heart's thumping, and I didn't like it. And I love the sky. I like storms. There's nothing that would make me feel like that. And then as I'm getting more and more afraid, and the winds start coming and buffeting our car, there's a voice in my head. And it says, in a very stern and serious, not mean, but kind of emotionless and intense way, be calm. It said something like, as calm as you remain, that's how calm you'll be. I didn't know what that meant. It sounded scary to me, though, because what if they're not calm? What are they going to do to me? So I said, all right, Terry, I'm going to lay my seat back right now and meditate, because I'm flipping out. And he said, okay, because he's just trying to control the car, because now winds were coming, and there were these huge golf ball-sized raindrops hitting the car. It was really loud. And so I laid back and I meditated, and I made myself slow my breath, and I made myself slow my heart rate, and I made myself just think about breathing in, hold it, breathe out, hold it, breathe in, hold it, for a long time, because if I didn't, I was going to flip. And eventually, it ended, probably about 20 minutes of driving underneath this huge thing, whatever it was, and there was obviously something up there, because right before I heard the voice in my head, I got this sensation that not only was I observing, I was being observed. something was in my mind. Something was watching me. And then it said, stay calm as you are, stay calm as you be. It didn't really feel like a spirit guide. You know, I know what spirit guides feel like. I know what demons feel like, just dark entities. You know, like, I know these things, and yet this didn't feel like that. It felt like something different. It felt like something physical. And so we get out the other end, we go into a gas station, I say, you guys often have storms like that. And the lady behind the counter is like, yeah, I guess. And I realized for the first time with Minnie that a lot of times when you start seeing this stuff, someone can be sitting right next to you. They won't see it. It's not, even, I'm talking UFOs. We saw a UFO on the beach in California, and I'm staring at it, and I'm looking then around the beach. No one saw it but us. Because if you're not looking directly at it, you're at the beach, you're looking at the ocean, you're looking at each other. If you're with a group, you're just not looking up. They a lot of times say that most people don't look up when they're outside. They look down or flat, and the more people look up, the more you'll see because they're around. So that was my first experience. After that, I became like one of those crazy people in the movies who never shower. I showered, but it wasn't like that. But walking around the bathroom, you know, like going through all of these research all the time and having newspapers stacked up around their house, and that's what I felt like. I mean, I still was good with the hygiene, but I was obsessed. So I would research all these things, and I found out about Vimanas, and I found out about how the ancient Hindu texts, which they say are holy texts, are really just plans to build flying ships. They even have the fact that they go on Mercury, that Mercury is what powers these ships, and how to build them, what goes in what compartment, how they spin, how they work. And then I'm researching other ancient traditions that talk about people coming down from the sky. I'm making the link between all these old fairy tales and myths that really just talk about technology, but in a way that you wouldn't know. So this was all still academic for me. I wasn't really thinking much about it. One day, we were also going raw at the time, raw food, and if you want to be opened up, that will open you up. Actually, we're about to move down to Virginia, and I'm really excited to do it again because the clarity and the emotional balance that you have when you're on a raw food diet, it's just amazing. And plus, I think that I've seen people reverse age that way, so I figure why not, you know, for vanity's sake. So, I'm realizing now that things are around me more than I thought. I thought that things would only kind of plug in and plug out, but now I'm realizing that I'm kind of feeling these presences all the time. And one day I just have, you know, a really good download. I'm sitting there with my journal and I'm laughing out loud, and Terry's across the room, and I'm saying to him, there's a whole group. There's a bunch of them, and they know us. They know both of us. And it's like our spiritual soul family or something, and they're laughing at me right now. And they're telling me, and I have these notes that are things that they said, you know, like we're here, and there's some more, and they're naming our other friends that are part of the same group, and then I'm thinking about it and saying, yeah, that makes sense. They do have these funny connections with us, and they're saying that a lot of them are not incarnate physically, and they're kind of not jealous, but really into and proud of the people who incarnate physically, because we all know how difficult the Earth School is. And so all these things cheering us on, and I still thought they were just spirit guides. I didn't think anything of it. Well, then, after another move, after some more stuff happened, I started getting deeper and deeper into researching extraterrestrials, and what a contactee is, and what an abductee is. And although I didn't have any memories of being abductee, that story about my parents having 3 immaculately conceived children was kind of weird. And the fact that my sister could read before she could talk was kind of weird. And the fact that people have commented on our eyes our entire life, and they say one thing about starseeds is they often have really weird eyes. It's not necessarily the color of the eye, but something about their eyes. And so all of these things are kind of coming together. At about the same time, my friend, who's an intuitive, you know, when you get together with your intuitive friends, you kind of do little readings on each other for fun, and then you'll go shopping or something, you'll come home and do more readings. We're kind of having a day like that. And she said, oh, I have a new guide. I see a new guide around you. So she tells me about him. She says he's your rhythm teacher, but not like drum rhythms. He's going to teach you rhythms and space between the rhythms and how to work with the rhythms of the cosmos. I'm like, oh, cool, you know. And she says that he has this little rune that will help me call him in. So every morning I go into a meditation, and I do my normal meditative stuff. I bounce the chakras, I connect to the earth, the heavens, and then I imagine this rune, and he comes and talks to me. And I didn't see anything. It was always kind of blurry, you know, but I was getting this information. He'd always give me a sentence or two. I'd always jot it down in my journal. And weeks pass. I then discover more about contactees, and I'm listening to a radio interview one night with this woman who ends up being someone who reported experience exactly like stuff I had, and I just thought it was a spirit guide. But she's explaining the way this person looks even down to hair color and eye color, and I'm dropping my broom as I'm sweeping the floor and saying, oh my gosh, I have to contact this woman. So I did. I said, I don't know why I'm contacting you. I usually don't do this. I know I'll sound crazy because I wasn't out of the closet yet. I know I'll still sound crazy, but I just feel the need to get in touch with you. And she emailed me back. I was biting my nails until she said, oh no, that's fine. I actually just started a forum. Come join it. I go join the forum. I'm on there for like 10 hours the next day. And I'm finding out that all of this stuff I'm researching, I'm helping people. Like, people are asking questions, and I know the answer. And I had no idea I knew all this stuff because I never talked about it to anyone. Because I'm just kind of compacting all this information that I'm learning through my wild research binges, you know. And so finally I'm getting to disseminate some of it and realizing that I actually knew more than I thought, which is kind of how it goes sometimes, I think, especially when you download and you get stuff in a physical plane. A lot of times you don't know what you know until people ask you. So I'm answering all this, and she says to me, why don't you be an administrator on our forum? So I said, okay. I'm not still an administrator on the forum, but the fact that I was amazing because I got to understand so much. There were all these articles coming in, and it was just so much fun to see and find connections between what I was going through and what other people were. One day I'm talking to her on the phone, and she lived in France, and she said to me, as I was telling her about this new guide, you know, a lot of times what we think are spirit guides are actually ETs talking to us. And I said, oh yeah, I know. Didn't think about it for my guide. And then the second I let that question come into my mind, I hadn't even asked it yet. Wham! There was a big resounding yes that went through my entire being. I mean, I felt it. And so I'm on the phone with her and I'm saying, I think that that's what's going on. Thank you for the confirmation. And then the next day, when I'm in a meditation, I say, okay, can I see what you look like? Can I see what you actually look like? And he was a gray. And he's one of the tall ones. There are little ones, there are tall ones, and there are really tall ones, which I've never seen. He's about 7 feet maybe, tan skin, not gray, very heart-centered. And that's something I'll talk about in a second is the abductions and then these other grades that teach us how to use our heart and go with intuition and make heart connections and do only loving things, because a lot of people wonder about that. And then now I'm the Virginia State Director for ICAR, which is the International Community for Alien Research. I haven't really started anything yet, but I will once I go down there. And I find out then that a lot of people have the same things happen that I have. And what I report is not unique at all. And so I'm wondering what to do at this point, because even though I was good on the New Agey stuff, aliens? I mean, okay, but if this is the case, then what about all of the crazy stuff that you hear? And what about the fact that anyone who ever says they talk to aliens, everyone says they're insane? What about all the New Agey people who then go, oh no, aliens are crazy, even though they're talking about their spirit guides and stuff, who I will say, since then, they're probably aliens, guys. Like, if they come to you and they're wearing a human suit, you might as well ask, because they might not be, but most likely they are. So, I'm about to segue into something else. Are there any questions before I go? Okay, I'm sorry, and I'm not even wearing a watch. I probably had you out here for like 3 hours already.
Yeah, 40 minutes. 40 minutes.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I'm good. Okay, so, this is what I have discovered. What ended up happening with the book was that one day, people started coming to me and telling me to write it. I'd known for a while that I needed to write something. I was always kind of a writer, and one of my teachers in grad school had me write a couple pages and send them to him every day over the course of like 3 years. So that was just kind of getting the gears in, and so now I can just sit down and pound stuff out. But I hadn't thought about making a volume, although I knew I had to. I knew there was something that I had to write and give. Excuse me, but I didn't know what it was. And then people started coming out of the woodwork and telling me, you have to write that. And I would kind of test my friends who I thought were not ET friendly or spirituality friendly, and I would say, I'm thinking about coming out of the closet without all my weird stuff. And people who I didn't think would be at all into that said, oh, you have to, definitely. And that really kind of got my attention, so I said, okay, fine, I'll do it. I ended up writing the book in like 2 months. It was extremely fast. And the book is not perfect. I will say there are typos in there. But the time that I published it, I knew that I had to publish it then. And I knew that I had a deadline. It was June 15th, so it was still pretty new. And I knew that I had to have everything in by then. I still don't know why, but I did find out later that was, it was a full moon, it was an eclipse, and there was something else going on that day that I didn't know when I set the date. And not only that, but a fun little thing, and I will say this is probably my ego getting involved, but I'll just put it out there, is that when I left school, some of my old classmates kind of weren't very nice to me about it behind my back. And it hurt because they were my friends, I thought. And they said I was ruining my life and I was going to not come to anything and da-da-da. As it turned out, June 15th, that weekend was the same weekend that they graduated. So I hadn't written a dissertation, I'd written a book. But it was still essentially the same thing. And in my opinion, I'm glad to trade that. So there's that. And now, every day, I've learned to connect every day. And about 2 months ago, right around when it was getting published, it came to me that I should try to type as I was meditating. So now every day when I meditate, I have my little netbook in my lap, in my little lap desk, and my eyes are closed and I type because, if you can type, I feel you can do it. I always have to go back and spell check because my spelling is atrocious when I'm not looking, but it works out. And so now what used to be a couple sentences are now paragraphs that I get. And they'll tell me anything that I ask, and I have a group that I go see, and then I have one main one that I go see who's the Gray, I call him my rhythm teacher. And I found out later what that rune meant, that is not his name, but it's kind of like a phone number. Like if I could imagine it right now, which I may do, he'd come on in and I'd feel like that little pressure on my temples. And sometimes I've seen things, sometimes I just feel them. And it's almost like, when I'm talking to him, it's like it's my own mind, but it's not my voice. And sometimes he tells me things word for word, and I don't know what I'm writing until later I go back and read it and go, oh, that was definitely not me. That's not how I talk. That's not my prose. None of that. So what have I learned? And this is what I asked what I should tell you guys today. I asked what I should talk to you about. And they said first to say what happened to me and how I got here, so I have. And then to talk about humans and where we are right now, and what's happening. And so this is what I know as of now. And I'm learning more all the time, so I'm sure it'll get more complex. I'm working on a second book, but there's way too much to fit, and I don't even know. I'm still going through what I'm even going to put in, because you have to pick and choose when you're getting paragraphs every day and it's intense. But this is what I know. So you have Earth, Gaia, who's a living being, who agreed to host and mother and incubate humanity. And so there were other humanish things flying around, and I know that more than one of them kind of worked together to create humans. Evolution's true too. How do you think they got us? All of it all kind of goes together with each other. So when they find these fossils, first of all, I think a lot of that's BS, and this is just because I was in the Smithsonian recently. I was super excited about going because I hadn't been since I was a kid, and I was really on that day intuitively, and so I thought I'd do a bunch of sleuthing while I was there. And a lot of what I found out was a lot of these things are lies. They're lying to people. Or they're telling us something's a theory. It's a theory that's not really verified, but they're telling us it is the truth and it was what happened. And we shouldn't do that to kids who are figuring things out and who are going to be the ones who in 20, 30 years will then be finding out more. You don't lie to them. You tell them this is where we are and I understand it. One day you'll grow on it. You don't say this is what happened. Don't question it, which is essentially what is going on. But anyway, so we're humans. Angels, our spirit guides, the gods of the ancients, were ETs. The difference is, when we were going through the Dark Ages, which were very necessary, and not the Dark Ages as in, the 1000s or the 1400s or whatever the heck. Dark Ages as far as duality, good and bad, the knowledge of good and evil. When they took the apple down, they went down for perfection. They wanted to know good and evil. They wanted to know duality. It was a fall in vibration, because we're lower now, we're denser, the earth is very dense. And when the god, plural really, if you read the right translation, there were more than one of them walking around in the Genesis story. And they said, okay, well if you have the knowledge of good and evil, this is the stuff that's going to happen to you. Childbirth is going to suck. You're going to have to find food, it's going to be hard. Life is going to be painful, you're going to die. That's what's going to happen if you want to experience good and evil. And they said, okay, we want to do it. So they said, okay, here you go. Now you have to. And so we are. But, from what I understand, something huge is happening, and now in human development is a really great time, because ascension, which is just the going up and vibrating faster, and a lot of other cool things are probably going to happen along with it, is now well in process. It's not starting, it's happening. And you guys already know this, a lot of you probably. So, the reason that ETs weren't known as people flying around doing stuff, they were thought to be angels, non-physical. Well, first of all, they are non-physical because they vibrate at a higher vibration than us, so they're not so dense. But they can come down into our vibration if they want. But usually they don't, because that's where they live. We're the ones going up. They're not necessarily coming down. But the reason that we had to have that division, and the reason that religions were important, even though they did so much damage, they also held the torch of this really important knowledge, because through these religions, every single person could still access the divine. Even while we were so far away, we thought that we were, because it was really an important piece of the Earth School, of this experiment that we're running on the planet, of this thing that we're evolving into, which is unique, which is special, which is very needed in the universe, because we're figuring something out here that nobody has before, through our duality, and through our coming up out of duality. And so if humans back then had known, I could just ask my angels, and they could fix stuff for me, we wouldn't have gone through it. We wouldn't have done our job. I've had them tell me before, we can encourage you, we can enliven you, we can heal you, we can motivate you, but we can't solve the lessons for you because you're the way shower. And so if you're going to forge this path, we can't do it for you, but they can help. So that's the difference. And also you hear about everyone having a bunch of guardian angels around them all the time. You just have to ask. It's very true. It's free will. It's because they can't just jump in and do stuff for you, because we're here to learn a lesson. Every single person alive on this planet right now is here for a purpose. Every single person is a starseed, technically. Now, whether or not they live as that, whether or not they ever need to know about the extraterrestrial presence, not important, because that's not everybody's path. Just the same as some people are atheists. That's fine. They're supposed to be this time around. Or they're supposed to have whatever journey that they have out of it, or into it, or that they learn while believing that there is no God. So that's what's happening. And the only reason that now we're being let back into the loop as far as what these things are, and as far as the fact that they're not some magical being, what we perceive as magic was spirit-infused technology. Our technology that we have now hurts our bodies, EMFs. Every time I'm on the phone for too long, my fingers start to buzz, I get a headache, I feel hot from the inside. It's that radiation. That goes against our other bodies, our energetic bodies, our emotional bodies. The technology that they have, everything works all together. And if you know, for instance, something about at least some of the ships that are used, they're actually alive. The ships are actually alive. They're not hunks of metal. One time before I really knew that I was being spoken to directly, I had this dream, and I was on a hallway, and there were all these metal pipes, and the hallway was metal. And I'm talking to someone. That person wasn't, I don't remember who it was, but someone's with me showing me around. I'm saying, doesn't all this metal bother you? I know that when I'm around a lot of metal, I kind of don't feel right. And there was kind of a little laugh, and the response was something to the tune of, our metal isn't like your metal. And that's all it really was. And then months and months later, I went back to my journal and found that, started laughing, and then I got it. But at the time, I didn't know what they were talking about. So now what's happening is the reason that we're being allowed to understand all of this, and it's not that someone's there holding a sword, it's that our vibration couldn't get to the point that we could fit it all. Our lives used to be extremely hard here on Earth, and they still are for a lot of people. But as one person wakes up, everyone they touch gets a little bit higher, and then those people do too in their vibration. That's why if you're in a fast vibration and someone's in a very slow vibration, a horrible mood next to you, either you're going to go down or they're going to come up, or a little of both, because you can't survive around each other. And so that's why we don't have to worry about going and proselytizing and telling people the good word. It's not important. As long as we own our own truth and stand firm in our own vibration of exactly who we are, that's fine. And that's more than fine, because we're remembering our divine state. Nothing is more divine than us. No entities are more highly evolved than us. That's a hard thing to say, because they're not and they are. They just remember who they are. So we are the same. We're just remembering. And if anyone ever tells you, human, not human, that they're better than you, that you're lower, that you're sinful, that there's something wrong with you, be careful, because they're not of the light. The ones that are of the light say, we want you to grow up. We want you to become grown-up children of God. Everyone says, we're children of God, we're children of God. Yeah, that's true, guys, who are proselytizing on the radio, but we're probably supposed to grow up. We're not supposed to stay perpetual children running around. That's never the point.